My phone lit up at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday in November, and the name on the screen was one I had not expected to see again. Not because we'd ended badly. Not because I deleted the number or made any clean, sensible decision about contact. Just because Petra Solano and I had an unspoken agreement, the kind that forms automatically between two people who have been careful with each other for 2 years inside a situation that didn't belong to either of them. That when the situation ended, so did we. The situation had ended 6 weeks ago. And then my phone lit up. I answered it the way you answer a call at 3 a.m. from someone you have been not thinking about, with a discipline that cost you something, immediately, and without pretending otherwise. Petra. A pause. Then, she made a mistake. I waited. But I'm not calling for her. I sat up in the dark of my apartment and thought about all the versions of careful I had been for 2 years, and how quickly they had just become beside the point. Outside, the city was the particular quiet it gets after midnight. Not silent, just lower, like it was minding its own business for once. "I know," I said, and I did. "My name is Seth Callahan. I'm 33. I work in urban planning for the city, and rezoning applications, public comment periods, the slow and unglamorous work of deciding what a neighborhood is allowed to become. I live alone in a second-floor apartment with high ceilings and a radiator that announces itself every morning at 6 like it has somewhere to be. I own more books than I have shelves for, which my ex called a personality flaw and which I call a different philosophy of organization. My ex was Claire Navarro. We were together for 2.5 years. She was warm and funny and genuinely good company. And we wanted different things in ways that took us a long time to admit were structural rather than patchable. When it ended, it was mutual, careful, and sad in the specific way of things that are nobody's fault. I do not have complicated feelings about Claire. I wish her well, I mean that. Petra Solano was Claire's best friend. Had been since college, 12 years. The kind of friendship that has its own grammar and its own history, and its own set of rules the rest of the world doesn't fully get access to. She was 31. She wrote and edited for a literary journal, the kind of work that involves reading other people's sentences and understanding precisely what they were trying to do and whether they'd done it, which I later came to think was why she had always known exactly what I meant, even when I was saying something else. She had dark hair she kept pinned up in a way that was always slightly imprecise. Not messy, just unconsidered. Like she'd done it in 5 seconds and had more interesting things to think about. She carried a blue pen clipped to whatever she was wearing, always the same brand, always blue specifically. Because red felt aggressive, and black felt final, and blue felt, she said once, like a working draft. I borrowed it once at a dinner party to write down a phone number and handed it back, and she held it for a moment before clipping it to her pocket like she was confirming it had come home safely. That was the first time I understood that Petra Solano was someone I was going to have to be careful around. The existing dynamic was defined entirely by the situation. She was Claire's best friend. I was Claire's boyfriend. We saw each other at dinners, at gatherings, at the particular category of social events that exist in the orbit of a serious relationship. We talked, really talked. The kind that goes somewhere, in the margins of other occasions. Next to each other at long tables. Waiting at the bar while someone else ordered. Walking to a second venue after a party when the group had thinned out and the conversation was easier. I told myself, across 2.5 years of this, that what I felt was simply the recognition of someone worth knowing. Admiration, even. The kind that is clean and categorized and does not require any action. I was very thorough about this. I was also, in retrospect, very wrong. The thing about being careful for a long time is that it leaves marks even when it works. I knew precisely how she took her coffee. Black, always. Ordered without hesitation. No consideration required. I knew that she tapped the blue pen twice on whatever surface was nearby when she was about to say something she'd been thinking for a while. I knew her laugh, the real one. The short, slightly surprised kind that happened when something was funnier than she'd expected. And I knew that she reserved it. That it wasn't given out casually. And that when it happened in my direction, I treated it like something I was responsible for taking care of. None of this was appropriate. All of it was true. Twice in 2.5 years, something came close to the surface. The first time was at a birthday dinner for one of Claire's colleagues, a long table, bad acoustics. And at some point, Petra and I were the only two people in a 3-seat radius, not absorbed in a side conversation. She was reading something on her phone, working, which she did at dinner parties with a complete absence of apology. And she looked up and found me looking and did not look away immediately. "You're bored?" she said. "I'm thinking," I said. "What's the difference?" "Volume," I said. She looked at me for 1 second longer than the exchange required. Then she went back to her phone. But she was almost smiling. And I watched her tap the blue pen twice on the tablecloth. And I turned to the person on my other side and started a conversation about something I don't remember now. The second time was harder. Claire and I had had a difficult week, not a fight. Just the accumulation of the kind of small misalignments that you stop explaining to each other after a while. I was at a gathering at their mutual friend's apartment. Claire was running late, and Petra arrived first and found me in the kitchen, opening a bottle of wine with more focus than the task required. She stood in the doorway for a moment. "Bad week?" she said. "Medium," I said. "That's usually worse than bad." I handed her a glass. She took it. We stood in someone else's kitchen for 3 minutes in a silence that was not uncomfortable. Which is the kind of silence that only exists between people who have been talking to each other, without quite saying so, for a long time. Then the front door opened and Claire came in, cold from outside, and the 3 minutes were over. Petra set her glass down and went to say hello. Before she did, her fingers tightened once around the stem. Just once. I noted this. I did nothing with it. I had become, by that point, extremely good at exactly this. Claire and I ended it in late September. Mutual, honest, an evening of two people agreeing that something which had been good was no longer quite right. No third party, no incident, just the particular exhaustion of wanting different futures and having finally said so out loud. I texted Petra 2 days later. A single line. Wanted you to hear it from me. Claire and I ended things. We're both fine. She replied 4 hours later. I know. She told me. I'm glad you're okay. Then nothing. Which was right. Which was what the situation called for. I spent 6 weeks doing the correct thing, which was to think about it very occasionally and mostly in the early morning when my defenses were low, and to say nothing to anyone, and to file the whole 2.5 years of careful under-resolved and get on with things. And then my phone lit up at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday in November. After I said I know, there was a pause. Long enough that I thought she might take it back. Not the call, but the last sentence of it. The one that was a door. She didn't. I've been sitting with this for 6 weeks, she said. Her voice was steady, the way her voice always was, but lower than usual. It was 3 a.m. She was sitting somewhere quiet, I could tell. No ambient noise, no TV in the background. Somewhere she'd gone deliberately. And I kept thinking, wait until it's appropriate. Wait until it doesn't feel like... She stopped. Like what? I said. Like I'm stepping into something before the room has cleared. It's been 6 weeks, I said. I know how long it's been. A pause. I've been counting. Something in my chest shifted. Not dramatically. Just like a door that had been left slightly open finally settled on its hinges. Petra, I said. I know this is strange, she said. I know the timing is. I know what it looks like. I know you might need more time, or that this might be. The pen tapped. I couldn't see it, but I heard it, a small click against whatever surface she was near. Twice, like a tell she couldn't turn off. I just couldn't wait anymore. I've been being careful for 2.5 years, and I ran out of it. I held the phone in the dark of my apartment and thought about long tables and borrowed pens and a silence in someone's kitchen that had taken everything I had to walk away from. Hey, you tap your pen, I said, when you were about to say the thing. I could hear it. A beat. You noticed that, she said. Not a question. I notice most things about you. I've been keeping that information in a drawer. She was quiet for a moment. Then she made a sound that was almost a laugh. The short, surprised kind. The real one. And I felt something I had been holding at a careful distance for 2.5 years stop being at a distance. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, she said. I needed you to know that I wasn't calling because she made a mistake. I'm calling because I've wanted to for a long time, and now there's nothing in the way except whatever you're thinking right now. I looked at the ceiling of my apartment. The radiator ticked. I could have offered her the exit. That would have been the careful move. You don't have to say anything more. Let's take time. Let's be sure. I had been the careful move for 2 years and 8 months, and I had been very good at it. And it had cost me something I could now see clearly in the dark at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. So I didn't offer the exit. The thing in the drawer, I said. Yes? It got heavy. I should have done something about it a long time ago. I didn't because it wasn't mine to act on. It is now, she said, quietly, directly, no backup version. I know. Another pause, different from the first. The first had been the pause before a door. This one was the pause inside it. It's 3 a.m., she said. I'm aware. I'm not going to say, I should let you sleep, because I don't think either of us was sleeping. I was awake before you called, I confirmed. I am not going to pretend otherwise. She laughed again, the real laugh, twice in one phone call, which was, in the metrics I had been quietly keeping for 2 years, significant. Okay, she said. The word landed like something settled. Okay, I said. We talked for another hour. Not about any of it. About her current issue at the Journal. About a rezoning case I'd been losing sleep over. About the radiator. About a book she'd been editing that she said was almost great and would be great if the writer trusted the last chapter more. We talked the way we had always talked. At long tables and at bars and on sidewalks. Except that now there was nothing on either side of it, requiring us to be elsewhere. When she said goodnight, it was past 4. She said, I'll call you tomorrow, in the daytime, like a person. I'll answer, I said. Also like a person. She said goodnight. She hung up. I lay in the dark for a while, looking at the ceiling, and thinking about the blue pen and the 2 taps and how she'd kept it clipped to her pocket like it had come home safely, and how that had been the first signal I'd ever had. And I had filed it away and kept it, and now I was taking it out of the drawer. It felt late. Late in the best possible way. 3 months later, she left a blue pen on my kitchen counter. Not on purpose, or not entirely. Because Petra Solano does not do things without some degree of decision. She came by to drop off a book she'd been meaning to return, and she was in and out in 20 minutes, and I found the pen after she'd gone, sitting next to the coffee maker with nothing remarkable about it, except that it wasn't mine. I texted her a photo of it. She replied, "Keep it. I have more." That one was getting low anyway. I kept it. It's in the jar on my desk where I keep things I use every day. She has not mentioned it since, which I believe is intentional, which I believe is the most Petra Solano thing she has ever done, and which I believe I will tell her I noticed when the moment is right. 6 months after the phone call, when her friend Danny asked how it had started, Petra said, "He answered at 3 a.m. and didn't pretend he'd been asleep. That was the whole thing." I would have said, "She called and told me she wasn't calling for someone else." And I realized I had been waiting for exactly those words for 2.5 years. And then we talked about a radiator for an hour. We are both right. Neither version is the complete one. The complete one is, it had always been there, between careful and appropriate and not yet and not mine. 2.5 years of a drawer that kept getting heavier. She called at 3 a.m. and I answered. And nothing that followed was a surprise, and everything that followed was worth it. Nothing important had come out of nowhere. It had just needed the situation to end, and one of us to finally pick up the phone. What would you have done if the person you'd spent years being careful around called you in the middle of the night to say they weren't calling for someone else? And have you ever kept something in a drawer for so long that the weight of it became the loudest thing in the room? Tell me your story in the comments. If this one stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.